kick us off with Maha. So we had
Perfect.
a really interesting quote by Calley Means, who's the brother of Dr. Calley Means, who is the U.S. Surgeon General.
Surgeon General. I sent this to you while you were away, I think, actually. And this stood out to me. As you said, Calley Means is the Surgeon General currently. She wrote a book called Good Energy and started a company called Levels and has been a fairly well-known advocate in the what we'll call lifestyle medicine space for the last couple of years. What is not always as well known is her brother, Calley, is basically like a lobbyist and a lawyer, I believe. But it's to say his background is very much in politics. And so the two of them have worked really hard and advocate a lot for a variety of things, but all dominantly within the health and wellness space. And so they are one of the people that when I'm trying to keep an eye on what's happening, I consistently watch them. I follow them just because they're definitely some of the voices playing tug of war right now with what is going to become our policy. And as we all know, we're in a very, we'll call it uncertain and turbulent time where we are definitely seeing breaking up of policy and then rebuilding of it. And because we haven't really sat down to truly iron it out yet, it feels very uncertain. But this was a post that really stood out to me, and I'll read it. It's a paragraph, so it'll take me a sec. But I think that I'm going to read it to you, and I want to get your sort of initial takes from it, and then I can piggyback as well, because I had some initial takes I can talk about, like when I read it, what I thought of. Okay. So it's just a picture of some people in an old, well-decorated, clearly like a political building. In backroom conversations, this government is asking how kids can be incentivized to eat healthier food, how we can get kids exercising more, how the next 10 years can see a revolution in science and not just more of the status quo. This is possible because Americans are now voting on children's health. Through the inevitable toxicity and darkness of DC and the onslaught from a sick care system that stands to be disrupted, I believe light is shining through. Parents are reading food labels more closely. Patients are asking more questions of their doctors, as they should. Researchers are asking questions they weren't allowed to ask before.
Wow. That's quite the statement. That's quite the statement.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
What stands out to you? Like, what does that stir up in you?
For me, it's really encouraging. It's really encouraging because some of those things that were mentioned, like encouraging kids to get more exercise, be more active, and eat more whole-based foods, encouraging parents to be more thoughtful in terms of what they're offering their kids, and empowering patients to be advocates for themselves. I think there's a lot of really encouraging stuff there. And also just kind of encouraging to know that politicians, they're people, and they got into this business, I think, most of them because they really care about some of these issues and want to make the world a better place. So yeah, it's generally really encouraging. And I think, I'm definitely, I know Calley Means well, and like I've read her book, and again, I'm less familiar with her brother, but there's not going to be 100% of things that we agree on. If you're married to someone and you agree on 80% of the things, that's pretty good.
It's the recipe for a happy marriage.
And so I don't
as long as you know how to disagree with the 20%.
Right. And
we'll come back to that.
Yeah. And I don't have to agree with 100% of the things that they're recommending to appreciate the intention of wanting to make America a healthier place. Yeah. And it desperately needs it.
Beautifully said. I think that's very in alignment with what it called out to me, which is I try, especially, I said it on the first episode of this podcast and I meant it. My goal with what's going on with Maha is to come at it as a dietitian. And it is a political topic, but I'm trying to distill it into the most apolitical parts of it because we are in a populist moment and our society is highly tribal, which means people are on their teams more intensely than ever, and they're against the opposing team more than ever. And that means that anything the other team does is wrong, period, end of story. And that just can't be true. But if we zoom in a bit further, I'm always looking at these policies from the lens of what does this mean for people? What does this mean for health as a dietitian? And when I read a statement that says, in back rooms, politicians are discussing how to incentivize kids to make better food choices. That is a massive green flag.
Yeah.
Our last episode, one of the things we've talked about this repetitively over the last 4 episodes, We knew that policy was going to be turned on its head and be shifted. We discussed at length what it would look like to have policy that was subtraction based versus addition based. And one of the things we outlined in one of our more recent episodes was the desire to see them work on putting good in, encouraging the good. We talked about how banning certain foods off of food lists, like the high sugar candies and those kind of things for SNAP benefit and like that kind of thing. Like that is we understand why that boundary is worth discussing, but also like I said, if they're going to do that, then what are they doing to encourage the other?
Yeah.
And you and I speculated in our last episode that from what we had seen with some of the meetings outside of the core meetings, that there were discussions with food advocacy groups, produce advocacy groups that were trying to improve access to fruits and vegetables. Going back to, if we're going to take food from millions of people, we better have alternatives for them to eat.
Yeah.
And so it only works if it's subtraction by addition. And reading that first sentence is additional proof of that notion.
Yeah.
And I would hope that statement, right? We are looking at ways to incentivize kids to take care of themselves better. That's a summary of that first two sentences. I don't know who could disagree with that. Now, we may fundamentally disagree as people on how to get there. Cool. Shape and sharpen our thinking. Let's sit down and have conversations. But can we for a moment acknowledge that is like a very genuine desire?
Yeah.
Wanting kids to be healthier is a great thing. And yes, you're allowed to be critical of yes, but the way you want to do it is going to cause X, Y, and Z ramifications. Please speak up about that. But let's first acknowledge that we may be coming from different sides, but have the same intentions.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this as someone that is, again, I'm not picking a side in this moment. I'm simply observing that where that is aimed is something that makes me very hopeful. And if we can, as I've said, squeaky wheels need to be squeaking. That was one of our more viral clips, which made me laugh. But we need to continue to be vocal so that we can make sure we're doing this in a way that's actually maximizes the good and minimizes the bad.
Yeah.
But that was just one of those moments where you go, man, when you follow like left-leaning media, he is categorized as this like horrific human being.
Yeah. And I, again, I guess to maybe shift more towards Dr. Calley Means, I actually read the book, Good Energy, and 80 to 90% of it I would wholeheartedly agree with in terms of taking a lifestyle-based approach to chronic disease management. That's what we're all about as dietitians, and even the means by which she's suggesting we do so, I wholeheartedly agree with, again, 90% of it. Now, there are going to be some things that I disagree with, like the criticism or the lack of support for things like GLP-1s. I believe them to be a valuable tool when implemented correctly in concert with lifestyle medicine, for example. And then we've also seen some of the policies coming out of MAHA that, like, to use your words, felt like a side quest.
Yeah.
And felt very much to me like majoring in the minors, like the things that maybe aren't going to move the needle as much. But I do think that those types of things are what get highlighted and are very salacious in the media and are attacked by a lot of people in the health and wellness community because they're like, you're missing the mark. Yeah. And that is missing the mark, right? Like overly focusing on something like food dyes when we have a total lack of sufficient exercise and movement in our kids. That is missing the mark, but it's good to see that those things are actually also being prioritized. They're maybe just not getting as much attention because they're less sexy in the media. Yeah.
You start to realize how much of our media is potentially just like we're interested in buzzworthy and interested in the negative and interested in the stir. To your point with Calley Means' book, my biggest criticism was the order of magnitude or the order of importance, right? Like the emphasis on have to eat organic vegetables and fruits when the average American consumes less than a serving of vegetables a week. A week, everybody listening. Yeah. And consumes 2 servings of fruit per week. And it's like, just saying, if a bunch of lower income families started including a can of green beans every day at dinner and had some fruit that was in like a water or a light syrup every day, health would change for the better. So before we jump to everyone needs to go spend $47,000 on organic food, can we acknowledge that the presence of produce is a win? And so I think, to your point, a lot of the minor things were some of the criticisms. It made me feel like some of her observations were a little bit detached from reality.
Yep.
And she clearly had a lot of friends that made a lot of money and didn't really understand what it meant to be food insecure. And so while the advice wasn't bad, I think, to your point, it missed. And
tone deaf maybe for the average American, but yeah, like I would say that audience of that book is definitely someone who's already quite health literate and probably already quite fit.
they were looking to optimize
exactly
as opposed to like start from square one. But
so
this
overall,
was just
it's just really encouraging.
It's very encouraging. I agree. No, and that's why I shared it with you. It was one of those moments where you go, you know, what we're seeing is we have had a lot of health that's been very much, and he said this way, accepting of the status quo, a medical system that continues to just get more and more expensive and less effective, a food system that continues to emphasize the wrong things. And now there's groups coming in with sledgehammers and breaking it apart. Sometimes I wish they weren't using sledgehammers because that is a really, really messy way to break things and people get affected. There are downstream consequences. So we end up in this game where we're accepting the downstream consequences that we currently have and know. And we're basically taking on the unknown downstream consequences of aggressive, radical change. The whole point of this podcast and this conversation between you and me is to continue to be vocal about the fact that before we actually make policy, the people that want to assume the status quo and the people that want to bring the sledgehammer, they need to sit down and have educated and robust discussions on what the middle is. How do you help the most people and hurt the least people, but make this better? And I think that as dietitians, we have a lot of insights to that. And I think that that's part of the reason where because of this topic, MAHA in particular, I'm able to remain politically unbiased because this isn't political to me. This is professional to me. This is what I built this company on, is trying to improve people's access to care. And so I really don't care who's in office. I am pro dialogue in this equation. And this was an example of, I got to read some dialogue from one of the people that's behind the scenes doing a lot on the right side. And I didn't disagree with it. And I also felt like it was something that would be hard to disagree with.
Yeah.
Which, a way to think about it, the way my brain frame works is, if you and I disagree about something, I don't get angry. I get curious, and I automatically work our way up I zoom out the conversation to figure out where we stop agreeing. So in this example, we need to figure out a way to incentivize children to choose fruits and vegetables more. Do we agree with that notion? And my gut instinct is that 100% of people would agree with that notion.
Except for the carnivores.
Then we would go down one and say, okay, how do we want to incentivize that? Right? And that's when we're probably going to have a difference of opinion, and there's likely going to be concerns that both parties have in the discussion that are likely rooted in their own personal experience. And that doesn't make them bad. It makes them very good, but it also makes them incomplete. And the whole point is, if you walk away, you and I disagree with something, that's an opportunity to potentially shape and sharpen each other's thinking and create a synthesis that's actually better. And so this is one of those moments where you go, wait a second, do we agree with what we're trying to do, just not how we're trying to do it? Because if so, that's a great problem to have. If you disagree with what you're trying to do, then you're at an impasse. That's what we call a stalemate. It's like we fundamentally want different things.
Yeah.
But in this thing, we're saying, no, we would all love to see children healthier with better access to better quality food. And one side is like, so what we're going to do is we're going to basically rip the Band-Aid off and get rid of all the bad stuff. And then we're going to figure out a way to put the good stuff in. And then the other side goes, well, that sounds like there'd be months of like turmoil and food insecurity. That's probably not great for a whole lot of people that you've never talked to because you have big houses and nice cars. So like, maybe we should like, I don't know, like take that off a little bit slower, or maybe we should subsidize this thing first. Now we're having a robust discussion at the level that is correct to actually problem solve.
Yeah, I think the character attacking is not useful, and if we actually want to advance our cause. And the last thing I'll say about it is pay attention to what people are saying, but pay more attention to what they're actually doing.
Ooh, please sit on that for a second. Say that again. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but please.
This was dating advice given to me by my mom, and it never left me. She said, pay more attention to what people do than what they say, because you could say a lot of popular things that people would agree with, like that quote. And what I'm more interested in is, cool, what are we doing? What are we actually doing to advance this cause? And am I satisfied with that? My guess is I'm never going to be satisfied with what we're doing on a government level to advance health, wellness, and nutrition. So I'm always going to have some level of criticism, whether that's I don't think they're doing enough, or I don't think they're doing the right things, or whatever it is. But I'm really, really curious, and I would encourage people to pay close attention to what is actually being done.
Yeah.
And I will say that things are being done.
Yeah. And we're still in a place of let's watch. Let's continue to be vocal. We don't need to be complacent. We need to be vocal when we see things going a direction that we are aware of or fearful of consequences. We need to speak those up just so that we have a full analysis of how we go forward. It's just going to give us a better chance at doing this in a way that's somewhat surgical. But it's interesting to see policy lags. Policy is sticky. There's so many things tied into it. And unfortunately, that it's rarely even good intentioned things end up getting a bunch of stuff, barnacles put on it, and enough barnacles eventually sink a turtle kind of situation. So like good intended things can unfortunately get very bastardized across a political process. And so that's part of the reason why there's a lot of disenchantment with what's going on. But at its core, to recognize that there is genuine intention. That is a reminder to give benefit of the doubt, right? That like, oh, maybe they're not actually my enemy. Maybe they just are coming at a similar desire from a different vantage point. And what can I help them see, and what can they help me see, and how could we maybe actually achieve this goal? So that reminder.
Well said.
And then what you said is perfect, which is to say we've been seeing a lot of talking. We've been seeing a lot of pomp and a lot of circumstance. We've seen some beef tallow in some air fryers, and we've seen some claims of removal of food dyes. Where are the subsidized fruits and vegetables for children? Where are the improved access to produce for food banks? Where are the things that right now we hear they're being talked about, and we understand that they probably take longer because they're complex, but we want to see that. I want to see those actions, not just the words. A successful shift in this policy is going to come not just from the intent, but what it's able to actually achieve.
Yeah, I can see how in the initial phase of some kind of radical change like this, the stroke of the pen changes are the easiest ones to make. Like food dyes would be an easy stroke of the pen change. The other stuff requires a little bit more implementation and logistics.
I'll leave you with one last thought. It's from a fantastic meme that I saw yesterday. And it was, God put dogs in our life to prove that actions are more important than words.
Dang. Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. It occurred to me a couple weeks ago that Apollo, as you know, I lost him earlier this year, and he was like my right-hand dude. And he was in my life for almost a decade, and we did everything together. And my loss of him was one of the hardest things emotionally I've ever gone through. And it's not that I've had this like clear sailing, easy life all the time. So it's kind of funny to realize like that hit me way harder than most of the other hardships I've been presented with. And he never said a word to me.
Yeah. For as much as you like to talk, you never had a conversation with him.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm content enough in my crazy to say that, oh, we talked a lot, but it was a very one-sided conversation. He gave me side eyes, pause, and requests for belly rubs. But it is to say that like I trusted and confided and felt like he had my back. Like there were feelings and emotions and bond I had with him that I know wasn't just felt, it was actually real. But it's to say that like, it's because his actions were consistent. And so that was one of those moments where you go, you want proof that actions are more important than words? Why do we like dogs so much?
Dang. Oh, well, let's end on that note. I love that. I love that. Oh, Miss Apollo.
Big guy.